Well, welcome everybody to another round of church stories. I'm super excited to be able to have Landon Collard here today from Waco, Texas, Journey Christian Church. So, Landon, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Absolutely, Andrew. I'm thrilled to be here with us.
Good, good. So Landon's been in the Nexus family for quite some time. He's actually serving on a special role on the board of Nexus, and just wanted to get to know you a little bit, just share your story with our Nexus family. So why don't you kind of take us back a little bit, give us a brief overview of what Journey is, how old you guys are, kind of your journey and what that has looked like.
Yeah, sure. So Journey just celebrated our 16th anniversary, and I joined Journey in year 4. So I've been here almost 12 years. I'll get to the early pieces of that to explain how all that came together. When I was a youth pastor, I was working with one of my best friends in ministry, and then because of life transition, had to leave. And in the middle of all of that, got exposed to church planting network. And he and I had dreamt of what would it look like to plant and lead a church that had no boundaries to reach people. If we got to simply represent Jesus and didn't have to worry about, the religious pieces of it, the denominational boundaries and barriers, and got exposed to some of that, and immediately called him, encouraged him to consider this. Fast forward several months, we had a meeting, and I was being recruited to go to a different church to do youth ministry. And my wife and I basically told him, we'll sell everything. We'll move with you. If you're going to go do this, let's do this, because he had already been approved to go plant. And they just didn't know where funding was coming from. And that was a big scare and a big worry, as it always is. And so they kind of pushed pause and said, we can't tell you not to go check out a terrific opportunity. So I went, I interviewed, got the job, moved to Amarillo, Texas, to a much larger church. And we got started. In about 3 months after we moved there, they had their first meeting in his living room with 14 adults to plant Journey. And so I was a cheerleader, celebrating that from afar. 6 months in, Rick is the guy who planted Journey, Rick Cobb. He called me about 6 months in and said, hey, man, we're already 150 people, and we are upside down in ministry help and structure. We need you. Please come. And so my wife and I honestly spent 6 months to pray and listen and struggle with, do we leave the most vibrant, exciting ministry that we've ever been a part of, that we just started, to go do this thing that's our dream? And at the end of it, with angst, I had to just call him and tell him we can't come. There wasn't peace in making that kind of decision. And so he and I both thought the door was closed forever. In the meantime, I brought our youth group through Waco, and they hosted us for some events that, we were doing, and we just celebrated with them. I got to worship with them 4 or 5 times over the first couple of years. And then about around year 3.5 to 4, there was another opportunity that opened up. And they had a guy that was on staff that was going to be transitioning. And we entered another conversation about us potentially coming. And so another 6 months of struggle in prayer and listening. But, Andrew, the heart of all of that, the yes to it, was very easily done. The struggle was the sacrifice. Yeah. Because I am just now at year 12 at Journey getting paid what I was getting paid as a youth minister in that church, right? Like, we were at a place where ministry was healthy and good and vibrant, but there was this ache in our heart. And the ache came from the very beginning of my time in ministry.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that real quick, and then I'll back off and let you ask some more questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I grew up a Church of Christ preacher's kid, and always loved God, knew God, found my hope with him of getting things right, though, and had a lot of questions by the time I was in middle school and high school. My brother was killed in a pole vaulting accident when I was a junior in high school. And the next 2.5, 3 years of my life were just hell on earth, man. It was just dark. And I ran away from God, and I ran to all kinds of crap. When I came back, and God spoke to me, "You have no life without me." And I finally agreed and submitted. When I came back, I came back to wanting relationship, not religion, with God.
Yeah.
And immediately started wanting to hand off what I had rediscovered with him, and started volunteering in ministry, and then leading youth ministries later. And we did that work for about 13 years, and that work that we did in youth ministry was always targeted around reaching kids that were disconnected from God. Reaching kids who don't know the hope that is available yet. And so we had this longing always to be a part of a church that just did that. That the whole mission was to reach disconnected people who don't know God or not connected to the people of God. And we knew that, unlike any other experience that we ever had, Journey had the opportunity to do that, because that's why it was planted. And so in 2009, we literally mortgaged everything. We sold cars, we sold our house, we took probably 2/3 less income. We went out and raised 1/3 of my income from Journey just to get to that.
Yeah.
And off we went.
Yeah, so that's a great story, man. I appreciate you sharing some of that. And when you transitioned back from the large church in Amarillo back to Journey, what did that transition kind of look like? Because you mentioned somebody was kind of going off staff. Was that your friend that planted the church, or like did you come in as the
No,
lead pastor at Journey?
it was a guy that came in. He entered the staff in year 2 at Journey, and he first entered for a year. He worked 40 to 50 hours a week for a year without any pay.
Wow.
And he took on the facilities, kind of the executive pastor role, facilities and ministries and finances and organizational systems. And he's an entrepreneur and very, very gifted. And then the second year, Journey paid him $30,000 for that full-time work. But then after that, he was transitioning off to go back to his ranch. So Rick offered me that job plus some, and we kind of built together a community pastor role for me that included all those things that I mentioned with him, but also included leading our staff, leading our small groups, leading our outreach to the city, and helping to cast vision on the leadership level.
Yeah, good, man. Well, very cool. Well, what's what do you like, or give us a little bit of a picture of what Journey has looked like through the years, what you guys kind of look like now, maybe what some of your ministries that you're focused in, and just some of the fruit that you've seen through the lives of your people, and maybe even share a story or two of just like this person has really just kind of encapsulated the heart of Journey. If we could share Journey in one story, that type of thing.
Sure.
So kind of give us a snapshot of what Journey is, and then maybe share a story or two.
Yeah. So I guess the best place to pick up is kind of where we left off just now. When I got to Journey, we were in year 4, and Journey had settled in for the previous 2 years at about 230 people. And between year 2 and 4, there was a lot of chaos in the church. There was growing pains, but struggle. And between that next year, part of what we did was to go back to the conversation of why was Journey planted in 2009, in 2005 with 14 people? What was the vision? Why did we exist? What were we about? And it is very, very clear to reach disconnected people. And so we started the process of functioning in year 4 and 5 in that same mindset, thinking through everything through how do we live today as if we were just planted with the same mission. And really began to realize from that leadership role that I was in that Journey had turned to probably 80-90% of what we were doing was about us. And there was still language of caring for those around us, but it was really just language. And so we started changing that. That process actually led me and Rick to move into our transition. We used the language of journey on the corner, and journey in the world. And we felt like that we needed someone that was going to lead the charge outside of our walls and reach the world around us in all kinds of ways. And we also needed to load the other barrel of the shotgun and help grow our people while we were doing that.
Yeah.
And so Rick took the outside the walls stuff, and I took the discipleship pieces, and we started leading together in that one movement. That helped us to intentionalize our partnership with Nexus. That same year that we made that transition in 2011, and I became the lead pastor, we helped directly plant our first church plant. We've done 4 direct church plants now through Nexus, while helping for almost a decade and a half on the administrative side of just helping Nexus's movement. But that kind of vision and sacrifice has just moved into our DNA.
Yeah.
We have a mandate that describes this thing that we do, and what we call it is, what we say is, we're a family who is walking with disconnected people and transforming community as we become like Jesus. And so if there's a target that Journey's about, it's disconnected people. If there's a secret sauce that we have, it to steal Phil's language, it's transforming community.
Yeah.
We reach the people around us through relationship, not through big programs.
Yeah.
And we disciple people through those same relationships.
Good.
And it's just a beautiful thing. You asked if there's one story that encompasses
a recent
it.
story.
One of my good friends, Adam Aldis, is somebody that I think of. And when I met him 4 or 5 years ago, he was close to God, but had not submitted to God, if that makes sense, and was beginning to really struggle and ask some questions. And through those relationships of living in community with people, actually one of our shepherds kind of took him under his wing and led him to submission in Jesus. That shepherd baptized him, and then started walking with him and mentoring him. About a year and a half ago, he asked me, along with another guy, to jump in, and we've been growing together in a weekly, just small conversation. That has led to him raising his hand and saying, "I need to lead this too." And now he and the other guy that I've been meeting with is are leading a community at Journey and caring for, 8 to 10 other families and leading them into growth in the kingdom. Um, it's he's grown and transformed so much. We actually this past year invited him onto our board, and so he's helping make financial decisions for Journey now, and is just completely sold out for the kingdom. And just watching that happen, quite honestly, Andrew, over and over, it's just a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. Journey's pretty well made up about 50-50 of disconnected people who are coming to faith for the first time or returning to their faith after decades, and people who have deeply walked with God for a long time. And that blending of those two people into a beautiful mess of a family it's just the most exciting thing I've ever been a part of.
That's awesome, man. Well, with yeah, I appreciate you sharing all that. With what everything that's kind of had transpired in the world over the last year and a half. Um, what do you think the most profound way that your ministry has been or will be impacted by everything that's kind of happened over the last year? Like, have you had a major shift in priorities or a major shift in one way or another, or what do you think that will be for you?
Yeah, I think it's two things very clearly. I think the visible, tangible impact is our drop in numbers, and what that has done to people emotionally, and how they kind of process through some of that. We're running about 50% right now of what we were pre-COVID, and the year leading up to COVID, we had just finished a year and a half of long-term vision planning of what's our next steps, and who are we going to be, and how are we going to function with continued growth with our facilities. Are we going to sell this place and move, or are we going to stay here forever? And doing all of those things, and there was an exciting vision on the horizon with all of that. And all of that's kind of, it's different now.
Yeah.
And um, but the beautiful thing is the other side of that coin, because we have recently re-engaged what all of that means for us, and what it is that we're doing and how we're doing it. And quite honestly, Andrew, what I described that we did at Journey in year 4 and 5, we're doing again in year 16.
Yeah.
And instead of the vision piece being about facilities and growth and managing strategy, the vision piece is all about our call and our mandate, and how do we fulfill this, and how do we both reach disconnected people and disciple them at the same time. And I'll tell you, there's more excitement, and there's more unity, and there's more passion about what we do, quite honestly, than any other time that I've seen us in our work together. And so, it's been difficult. I don't want to lie. It's been
Yeah.
difficult,
Yeah.
but I I'm thrilled and excited about where we're headed, and know that God's hand is on it and He's blessing it.
Good, man. Well, I mean, you guys have been through a lot. You've been committed for a long time with Journey, and I've always appreciated your leadership and your humility in that. Um, as you've kind of transitioned and all these things, and been through Journey and been through all these ups and downs of life and ministry, what has life been like for you and your family through the whole process of Journey?
You know, um, I love that you asked that because it is core, right, to what we do. Um, our move to Journey was one of the biggest sacrifices that our family has ever taken. We didn't plant Journey, but the sacrifice to move into it was very similar. And I remember just a few years ago, a couple of years ago, my son, who's 21, a junior in college, looked at me and he said, "You know, Dad, when we moved to Waco, I thought we were poor." And I was like, why did you think that? And he goes, "Well, when we lived in Amarillo, we went out to eat 3 or 4 times a week and we did all this stuff. And we got to Journey and like it was maybe once every 6 months. I thought we were poor." And I looked at him, I was like, "Well, Brady, we kind of were." And but to hear my kids talk about their experience, I'll speak to Brady again. When he graduated, he had the opportunity to bring the teaching that Sunday morning, and he read a letter that said that was titled "A Letter to Journey," and he just told them about his experience and how he went from a church environment to a family of God. Mm. And as a junior, he turned and told me right before he went to go play a basketball game, he said, "Dad, you've got the best job in the world." I get emotional about that just because when your kids see and feel what this is, they understand the strain, but they also understand the joy and the passion of it. They understand the beauty of watching their own friends come to life in front of them. Watching, Brady want to give his life to this kind of work as well. Watching my daughter, who's a freshman at Friends University, pour herself into the Christian Spiritual Formation program, as well as get a teaching degree. And her tell me, "Dad, my teaching classes are okay, but man, I just love this stuff I'm learning about God." To grow up as pastors' kids in this environment and them want more of it and not less. It just tells me everything I need to know. For me and my wife, we do ministry together, and it's joy and sacrifice all mixed up together. And she is as sold out as can be for this, and is my supporter, but also my biggest critic.
Yeah.
And I love that about her. I think the thing that I would share about that piece of it is we've learned to stay in the constant conversation of how we're doing, and to be willing to look at each other and name it and say we need to drop everything and go be with each other. We're committed to doing date nights and to just nurture this and not lose each other in the midst of this ministry. And if it weren't for that, I couldn't still be doing this.
Yeah. Good, man. No, that's a beautiful picture with you and your son. And yeah, you always hear the horror stories of pastors' kids and happens through that. But that's a beautiful testament to your heart and devotion to the ministry, and to again, to that mandate that you keep talking about, that the mission's worth it, man. All the
Yeah.
sacrifices that we put into it and everything. So last question for you is just to talk to you about your journey with Nexus. What is you mentioned, I think you mentioned a timeline of a while that you've been serving on the board of Nexus, and working with us and our ministry. What has that partnership looked like and meant to you and to Journey?
Yeah. Well, that's been a growing partnership for me personally. So when I first got to Journey, I watched the partnership from afar. Rick, who was the planter here at Journey, actually was an associate director of Nexus early on. And so he was the conduit to Nexus entirely. I met with Rick and with Greg, and would have lunches with them once or twice a year with Rick. But I didn't attend any of the Think Next at that time. I was not involved with Nexus other than a relational piece with Phil. And I remember in those days, I was kind of pushing and challenging Phil of, hey, we're kind of out here on an island. Like, how do I find connection with these other guys, right?
Yeah.
And that was from a community pastor, an associate pastor role. When we transitioned, and ultimately in around 2013, when Rick transitioned completely off of our staff and we sent him to go start a 501c3 independent organization, that's when I really moved forward and realized, I need to be the conduit to Journey, for Journey to Nexus, and started really nurturing that relationship, started going to the training events, and then started bringing some of our staff to it over the years. And, that was just a lifeline for me. It was a place that I found for equipping, a place that I found for shared heart and ministry for the lost, and just found some affinity there. Journey had been partnering financially with Nexus for about 2 years before I got here. And so it was a natural kind of thing to continue. But once I got in, kind of connected more relationally, and once we planted that first and then second church, there was a different investment for me. And I wanted to do whatever I could to help nurture that movement. And so several years ago, I guess it's 3 or 4 years ago now, that growing relationship ultimately led to Phil first inviting me to go to some training with him and Tim Halstead. We went to the apprentice experience, and having 4 weeks over a 2-year period and chasing out discipleship with Phil and in that environment really kind of cemented some things as well. And then transitioned ultimately to him inviting me on the board and partnering at that level. So I just, I love 2 things about Nexus. And it's really, I believe, the heart of Nexus. I love our call to plant churches because I believe that it is the most powerful way to reach people who don't know God. And I love the leadership commitment to care for those who are planting that Nexus has. And it is, I said, transforming communities, Journey's secret sauce. That leadership care is Nexus secret sauce. And I've watched Nexus get better and better and better at it
Yeah.
over the years. And I love what we do and where we're headed with that. And just couldn't speak more highly about it.
Awesome. Well, Landon, thank you so much, man, for taking some time just to share some of your heart, some of your story, and God, we pray for just continued blessing on Journey, on you and your family and your staff as you guys continue to fight the good fight. So thank you so much for taking some time, man.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it, Andrew. Thanks for inviting me.